Hi, I'm Rev.Jessie Brandon, and welcome to Epiphanies. I'm a metaphysical minister and a life cycle celebrant, and on this show I get to bring two of my favorite things together, people and books. So today, I hope you've got a cup of tea or coffee and you're settled into your favorite chair, because we're going to be talking about the Celestine Prophecy. It's so old that I don't even have the paper cover anymore, so what James Redfield has to say in the Celestine Prophecy is that for half a century now, a new consciousness has been entering the human world, a new awareness that can only be called transcendent, spiritual. And if you find yourself reading this book, then perhaps you already sense what is happening. You already feel it inside. Well, isn't that a marvelous way to start a book? So this is actually kind of a spiritual fiction, I guess you'd call it. It was an experience he had that he developed into a book. And to talk with me today about it is Lisa, the artist. Now, Lisa has her Creative Madness Art Studios in Elmvale, and she teaches adult and children classes there. She does intuitive art therapy and is a professional artist creating stone carvings, paintings, and murals. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessie.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming today. So I'm going to hand you the book and ask you, why this book?
Well, it was so long ago. Like, I read this when it first came out, so it had to have been well over 20 years ago, almost 30 years, and it was an incredible shift to read something that was like a journey, but every single time there was always that extra special thing that happened when he was paying attention. So it was about becoming more aware, and but it was light and fluffy and moved along, and you know, really well written. But it was a wonderful adventure, and made you aware of connections around you if you're paying attention.
If you're paying attention,
if you're present in the moment.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and that wasn't a really common thing back then.
No, it certainly wasn't.
Now that's what you always hear. Oh, you got to be in the moment. You got to be in the moment. You got to be present. But then I guess that's when it just first started to come out.
Yeah, so true. Because I was thinking about it 30 years ago. I mean, I knew in high school about yoga and meditation, but they were boring. and so it was books like this that pulled us all into that moment. So then I want to know, what exactly spoke to you in the book? Is there one thing, or are there many things that spoke to you in the book?
There would be many things. It was about taking that time. Like, every time that he came to one spot or another, it was like he stopped to breathe, to just look around, not rush through or be distracted by anything or where he had to be down the road. He was taking that moment to just breathe and go, okay, what's going on? And then as soon as he did that, someone or something connected him and showed him a little bit more of a way to go.
So sorry.
No, that's okay.
How did this change you then? Did you immediately put these things into practice? As an artist, is that something that came up for you then?
I believe I was already doing that, so it was more like a ha, you know,
yeah,
somebody else is doing that too, even if it's, you know, even if it's, you know, not everyday real to everyone, it did resonate at the time.
Okay.
So I was happy with that.
And have you recommended or given this book to anyone?
I don't even have my own copy right now. So I have suggested it, recommended it, and given it away many, many times.
Yeah, that's certainly how it happened for me too. I had the really good fortune to be part of a reading group that it had already been running for about, I think, about 4 or 5 years. And I was introduced to it by a neighbor. And, excuse me, I was in that reading group for 12 years. And this was one of the books we read, and many others that I'm not going to name because I think they're coming up in other shows. But it was just the most wonderful experience to be with people reading this type of book and talking about the experiences and experiences in our own lives that mirrored what the book was talking about. So yeah, and this isn't even my first copy. I think I've given away at least a half a dozen. So yeah, it's truly a wonderful book. So what is the one takeaway that you would want people to get from this book?
Well, definitely slowing down long enough to breathe and look around you. It's not a common thing these days. Everyone is a little on the distracted side. There's things that have developed at this time in the world that definitely have contributed to that. And I don't want to, turn that down. It's just, it seems that a lot of people are not as connected as they used to be. And I believe that that really helps our soul and our own evolution if we're more connected to the world around us, and especially nature.
Yeah. So would you say that rather than slowing down when we got things like this book and other notices, we actually sped up, we didn't pay attention?
In a sense, I think we dumbed it down rather than raised our awareness to other possibilities, because it's not about what people are telling you or sending you, it's about what's happening around you in that moment. So it's not about information, it's about a spiritual connection, or and sometimes I don't like to use that because everybody wants to tag it with different religions or things. It's just about our connection to the planet, because we're all connected. And in regards to that, if you are able to breathe long enough to really feel what you feel in that moment, it does have more answers for you, and then you're less distracted and less confused, and really are in your own center and know where you need to be in the world in order to, say, be of service or help someone, or,
Absolutely.
be the best that you can be.
Right, and that's certainly something that I talk about in my own life, in the various other things that I do, is about who are we and what are we here for. And certainly I think that that's exactly it. We come from, for me, we come from the Creator, and it's not about religion, it's about spiritual connection. And so whether you use God, Creator, Universe, Source, it's all the same thing. It's that divine knowing that is in us if we stop and listen. And certainly that adds so much to our lives, because then we can see who we really are and what we're here for, which is to remember who we are and to pay attention to the wonderful world that we live in and all of the things that are possible. And I love that you talk about being connected to the planet, because of course we've done so much damage in the environment and we're killing the planet. And so this book is a perfect step-off point for people just kind of coming into that knowledge and seeing what it looks like to be aware. And I think that it can really lead them on a journey. I mean, I just love books so much that it's just from one to the other, finding out more and more information. And I think that what has happened, and I'm sure you would concur, is that with the way technology has taken us, instead of making life easier, it's made us busier. So that I always carry my phone with me so that anybody can reach me at any moment. And there's so much on Facebook and on social media and just, the interwebs, as I've heard people joke about it. There's so much information that you can get in like 5 seconds that people don't sit down with books anymore. And so they're not allowing themselves that opportunity to sit and quietly read something and then contemplate it and see if it fits for them. And so just what has been your experience with books? Do you read a lot?
I do, not as much as I did, just because life got busier. But I just wanted to make a comment in something that you just said in regards to the fact that we're killing our planet. I think that if everyone realized that Like that's a statement that's outside of ourselves. If everyone realized how connected we were, and they actually realized that we're killing ourselves, like just take that concept for a minute. We're killing ourselves. Do you think that everybody is out there to kill themselves?
Yeah.
But we're so connected to the planet that the more damage that we do to the planet, the more we cause our own extinction. I think that whole concept, if anybody really realized it, I don't think that there would be as much damage being done or wanting to be done, because I don't really think that our sole purpose is to cause our own extinction.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. What a beautiful idea. And you're quite right, because as you touched on, we are all one, so we are all connected to one another. And that's just not people. That's the trees, the animals, the creepy crawlies, the flying creatures, everything we are connected to. And so every time we don't take care of ourselves, it is reflected in the outside world, in what we're doing. So that's a beautiful point to make. And it's really funny because I did not recognize that when I was younger. It's only as I've matured that I've come to the realization that what we do to ourselves is exactly what we do to others. So that's, I mean, simple things like getting good rest and eating the proper foods and you know, taking care of your body, and then taking care of your mind, your spirit, your soul, everything involved in there.
and that's why it connects to books, because to answer your question, do you remember how you feel when you're reading a book? Do you feel content? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel happy because it's a funny book? Do you feel engaged, completely engaged in that moment with each word that's on the paper in front of you? And you can go back and read it, and it doesn't have any light behind it. It's not affecting you in any way. It's just taking that moment with each word, and you're absorbing it, you're imagining it, you're exercising your imagination. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's massive. You can actually literally jump into that environment in your mind. So it's such a wonderful thing for you to be in that place, in that moment, in that place of peacefulness, while you're relaxing and reading a book. And I really hope that everyone remembers that and doesn't let it go in the long run as books get replaced with other ways of reading, because there's nothing like just curling up under a bunch of covers with pillows or in a beautiful, comfy chair and quieting your surroundings in order to engage with a book so intimately.
You know, that so perfectly explains why I say, I hope you've got a cup of tea or coffee and you're in your comfy chair, because that's exactly the image I'm trying to create by that statement. Just the magic of being in a special place, be it your bed or your favorite chair or just somewhere in your home, and you're curled up with that book that you've just been waiting to get to all day. And the things that it brings alive in you as you're reading.
It's ultimately that gift that you give yourself. The practice of giving yourself a gift is that time.
And that's something I tell my clients all the time, is about giving yourself even just 5 minutes with something, whether it's contemplation or sitting with a book or just some way that you say with intention, this is a gift for me, this is what I'm doing for me right now. And it does open us up to who we are. What do we like? What would we do differently? Is there anything in the book that we'd like to try? I mean, I created a bucket list years ago, and one of the things on it was skydiving, and I actually never thought I'd do it. But this summer there was a fundraiser for Youth Haven in memory of a young gentleman who wanted to skydive and unfortunately was killed before he was able to do it. So his family created a fundraiser for Youth Haven because he was a young man, and everybody skydives. So I went, and trust me, I'll never do it again.
That's crazy.
But it was
that's wonderful.
Yeah, and it was a book that talked about, in fact, there was a movie called The Bucket List.
Yes.
And it was, but it was a book that started me on that journey of exploring the things that I read about in books that I might want to try someday. And so be careful what you wish for.
It's wonderful and exciting, though, too. Like, you'll never, ever forget it.
No, I absolutely won't. And that's what's really special. That's what I think a bucket list should be about. And I mean, all of the things that I've read about through books, I've been reading since I was 6 years old. And the two books that were most prevalent in my home were not really books, they were magazines, but National Geographic and
Wonderful.
Reader's Digest. And I learned so much about the world from those two books. And that just kept me moving forward. I couldn't wait to get my hands on books. And it's funny because even my vocabulary has always been very good because I read so much and I knew, you know, you didn't always learn how to pronounce the words properly. I remember one time I said my father was the epitome of a gentleman because I'd seen the word and I knew how to use it, but I'd never heard it. Anyway, point being that I was teased unmercifully in high school because I spoke so eloquently, because my vocabulary was enriched because of all the reading I did. So getting back to this book in particular, is there anything in there that you can read to me? I know you said you wrote some things down.
I did write a few things down, one of which was dreams come to tell us something about our lives that we are missing. And I don't know how many people feel like they dream or pay attention to their dreams, but I guess it's because I've got an overactive imagination being an artist that my dreams play back like I'm in a movie. And it's incredible. And for a number of years, I actually documented my dreams, whether I'd wake up in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, because they only seem to last so long, vividly, that is, and be able to jot things down. And I found them just fascinating, some of the things that some of the people, some of the representations, and things that would happen in my dreams. And again, it's just another tool to create awareness in your life. It was never really overly sad or emotional. Quite often I'd come off a dream being excited, and it would start my day again, you know, really having something else to think about and imagine and consider and reflect on.
Yeah.
So that was already good. I always thought this one too, sexual union is a holy moment in which a part of heaven flows into the earth. I thought that was really interesting.
Say that again.
Too. Okay, because a lot of people, the way things are going these days, it's different, right?
Yeah.
Sexual union is a holy moment in which a part of heaven flows into the earth.
Now, what does that mean to you?
That those moments should be sacred, special. You know, you should be present in regards to those, and that if that were true, then we'd be creating a lot of a happy, loving energy on this earth.
Right.
And I believe some people are, but I believe a lot take it for granted, and it's just not that precious moment that it should be.
That's truly wonderful. I love that. Now, the imagery of flowing into the earth was so beautiful because I literally saw a picture in my mind of the energy that we're creating in that sexual union, that flowing into the earth, it isn't a metaphor, it's real, and the earth is us.
Exactly.
So it ties right back to the whole we are the planet. So what we do to ourselves, we're doing to the world, and vice versa.
Well, in the process of that, it's actually igniting all of these endorphins and wonderful things in our body that tend to be overlooked for the sake of you know, your careers or your money or the kids or all of those things that take up your time in your life. And next thing you know, years have gone by, and what, you know, incredible loving experiences have you got to feel about. It's not even about talking about it, because quite often it's very intimate, and it's just about you. And I think that the more that you can contain, reflect on those loving moments, the more you go through life being fairly happy and content and loving and kind toward other people.
Right.
That's in my opinion.
I totally agree with you. It puts me in mind of Sting, a person I've always been fascinated with, and he talks about tantric sex. Now, everybody thinks that that is a specific way or something. I shouldn't say everybody thinks that, but there are people who think that it means woo, you know, like the Kama Sutra. But in fact, what he says is that he's making love to his wife from the minute he walks in the door. The way he looks at her, the way he speaks to her, the way they treat one another. That's all part of the process leading up to their joining together and creating that beautiful energy and that beautiful moment that then becomes the energy of their home and their lives and their world. And I think it really speaks to that statement. You know, is there another one that made you think?
Well, I think this is part of the concept of the Celestine Prophecies, in that we must assume every event has significance and contains a message that pertains to our question. This especially applies to what we used to call bad things. The challenge is to find the silver lining in every moment, no matter how negative. And that's very prevalent in this world these days too. A lot of people say, you know, they're going through really trying times, but they made me a better person, or they opened my eyes to this, or, and, you know, but not everybody thinks that or feels that, and that's completely understandable too. You know, you have to balance out how you really feel, but in a sense, it's actually making you reflect and feel about it, rather than just, that's a really crappy thing that happened, that's a really good thing that happened, and then leave it at that. It's all of these things are part of who we are and who we come out as in near the end. Right.
I always say that.
Are we going to be regretful of all those moments, or are we going to go, wow, they were challenging, but they really made me who I am?
I always say every challenge is really just an opportunity to know who you are, who you bring to the table, and to become the observer self and watch yourself respond to things rather than react, because it's in the reacting that conflicts can arise when we're talking to somebody. But if we can sit and watch ourselves, and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, wow, this is so fascinating, and I wonder if this is how an artist thinks. And yeah, I know. Well, what I'm meaning is that you yourself are an artist. I mean, you have beautiful work. We've got this lovely piece here that I'm going to get you to talk about in a moment. But what I'm saying is that you see things in such a beautiful, eloquent way. Is that a part of the creative mind? Because I can't say that I've always been that way and made those connections.
This book definitely made a difference, but I think you want me to answer that later. In regards to that, I think part of my Scottish heritage, and I had this pointed out to me a number of times, is Scottish people always think it could have been worse. So when you've got that concept, you know, even though you went through troubling times or anything like that, it could have been a lot worse. You know, I try and put myself in other people's shoes in other parts of the world, and you can't literally experience what they've experienced, especially the horrendous atrocities that have always happened. It's just we're more aware of it now, but they've always happened, and it makes me feel like I do want to make this world a better place, because it's just not fair sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Tell me who Lisa the artist is, because that's what I really want to get to before we have to say goodbye.
Okay.
So I know that you have the studio in Elmville, and what happens there?
I have several studios, actually. I live on 25 acres, and I've managed to create just with my, a lot of my children's artwork ended up in the studio. And first it was in a basement.
Sorry, it was?
First it was in a basement in a 150-year-old home. So big beams and low ceilings, and you know, you can really feel the pioneer, you know, the way it was built and the energy of that, you know, built by hand. It's wonderful.
Now tell me something special about that 25 acres. what I know what I'm referring to.
Yes, well, a couple of things actually. It's got some really old trees on it, of which I make a regular habit of hugging, and I've created a lot of trails. I've also created what I call healing domes. They're made out of dogwood, and the dogwood itself grew so high that I bent it over and started braiding it and weaving it. And then this a year ago, August, I started a labyrinth in my backyard, and it ended up being a double labyrinth. So it had a male and a female, masculine and feminine. And so I continued to work on that for the last year and lined the whole thing with perennials that were donated by just wonderful, wonderful people that would just go, oh, I've got, you know, shovelfuls, and then they would show up with their whole vehicles stuffed with perennials, and you know, that took me a couple of weeks just to put in, but it was definitely a labor of love. I felt better every time that I would walk out into it, and I would try and make a point of walking it every day and going in with any negative thought whatsoever, dropping it and walking out in gratitude, trying to practice gratitude.
That's wonderful.
Every day.
I do a women's release ceremony at the Labyrinth here in Sunnydale Park, and that's exactly the premise, is that you walk in thinking about what you want to release, and you come out with the gratitudes, and there's a whole process to it. But I want to know more about Lisa the artist. Tell me about this piece here.
When I was just a teenager and I was doing a 4-year fine arts course, I think I had a few chips on my shoulder, and the sculpture teacher at the time could see it clearly and just directed me over to the carving area, and with very little direction, I took a chisel and a hammer and was carving away, and it was really speaking to me because it was an aggressive but safe way to express myself. And the very first piece that I did, I split right in two, and I just went, oh, I guess that didn't want to be that after all. So I really trusted the stone and what was telling me. The stone is a piece of the earth. Mm-hmm. So I get to work with a live piece of the earth, and the more I worked with it, the more I processed my own things, mm-hmm. My own feelings, my own reflections, my own stuff that I'd been carrying, and realized the energy that I could put into the work that I do. So it's gravitated to being healing art, healing sculptures. It's not just you know, a thing to put on the shelf.
This is Lisa the artist at Creative Madness Studios in Elmvale. And Lisa, I want to thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. I could go on for an hour. I wish we had more time.
I really appreciate you having me. This has been so special.
Oh, that's really great. Thank you so much for joining us here on Epiphanies, and I look forward to seeing you again. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us. Thank you.